Unlike Emil,
I've spent 300 years building, converting, and sculpting to make the world's most unique pirate-themed Giants army.
I only spent 5 days building and converting to make the world's most unique Skaven army. And today, I'm gonna start painting that army to make sure that I finish my custom-built Skaven army before Emil. And while I do all this, I'm gonna be teaching you the best 6 secrets I've learned through my painting career to battle your large minis, your vehicles, your monsters, everything that's bigger than Steve's ego with these secret techniques. In this video, I'm gonna get some serious work done on my custom-built Skaven army. And even though I'm painting on an Age of Sigmar miniature in this video, of course all the tips and tricks and secrets I'm showing today can of course be used on larger 40k minis, you can use them on sci-fi minis, you can use them on infinity minis. Secret 1. Focus on the right thing. When it comes to painting something like this that's really big, it's not a great idea to start focusing on the tiniest details of the miniature. Instead, what we do is to try to draw all the focus and attention to the cool part of the miniature. And what I like to do is I tend to look at a lot of artworks and references to make sure that I get into the correct headspace, get the right feel for the army before even starting. And once I'm done with looking at all the questionable images online, I start looking at what specific colors I want to use for the project. And luckily for me, I've already started painting my Eshin dudes for the warband, so I know exactly what paints and colors to use. The plan is to have a dark and moody paint job to really sell this as the Lord of Eshin, Master of Shadows and dankest of memesters. So the plan is to paint a darker base, then put a lot of time on a nice and rich skin tone. Cause this guy, he's been out and about getting some sunny vacations, nice time if you're a lord. And then of course a dark bluish robe to match my other Eshin guys. If we do have any other detail around the face or chest area, we will make sure to spend a lot of time on that in the future as well. And the second thing I really want to put a lot of focus in are the brilliant weapons of the mini. I'm gonna make these really reflective and make sure to highlight them to bright tones. This means that for this miniature we're gonna spend the most time working on the chest and face area alongside the weapons of the mini. This will not only save us a shit ton of time, but it will also make sure that this miniature is more pleasant to look at, because we will be more drawn into the main focal points of the miniature. Anything outside of this main focal point, like the base or the rocks or the robe, can sort of be left a little bit more untouched. As long as we make sure that the application is neat, we're all good. Now that all that is set, we can finally start painting this motherfucker. Secret number 2. Paint the largest area first. We've now got the plan all done and we know all the colors and paints that we're gonna use. And just like with any paint job, I tend to start painting the area that I'm most excited about. I'm just kidding, guys. Of course, we're gonna start painting the largest area of the miniature first. And even if it's true in this case that the skin is the area that I'm the most excited about painting, let's just say, for educational purposes, I'm starting with it because it's the biggest area, and therefore you should do it as well. The reason why I like starting with the biggest area is because it helps me quickly understand if the scheme I've picked is going to work or not. If I start with all the small details first and then start working on the large areas and realize I don't like the tones on these big ones, repriming the entire miniature is going to be a real pain in the ass. If we instead start with the largest area, we'll get to the point where we like or dislike the scheme much faster. Starting off by covering the entire area with burnt red. Then, by bringing out the sunny skin tone, I can start making it brighter and brighter. By first starting with a mix about 60% burnt red and 40% sunny skin tone. And don't worry, I'm gonna be adding more fun stuff to the skin in a later step, but for you guys to see that, you should really stick around to the end. Then we're going up in brightness by adding more sunny skin tone to the mix for every layer of highlight we add. For this to look as good as humanly possible, you guys also need to know a little bit of how light works. You see, the closer something is to a light source, the brighter it's gonna be. Perfectly simple, I know. If we then apply this theory to the miniature, we can clearly see that the foot is further down on the miniature and further away from the light source, that in this case would be, you know, the big round thing in the sky called the sun shining down on him. Whereas the hand and the upper arm and like all the raised areas that are further up are gonna be closer to the same light source, meaning that they will be brighter than the foot. Makes total sense. And another thing that you also can do to make it even more dynamic and even popping more as a viewer is to paint the areas that are closer to you as the viewer. In this case, sort of the rat's arm holding the sword. If you paint that one a bit brighter than the other areas, it's gonna look even more like he's coming towards you, and it's gonna be really dynamic, really cool, and a nice little secret tip there for you. Moving on, I had a plan to work on this mini really methodically and break down each part as I went, but then something happened. That brings us to secret number 3. Paint awesome faces and weapons. This secret is kind of a callback to secret number 1. And if you guys have been following this channel for a while, you guys know that we love painting awesome weaponry and tend to spend way too much time painting awesome looking faces. You see, when painting a really nice sword and face, we put a lot of focus on a rather small area of an other times really large miniature, which in its turn allows you to spend less time painting a really nice looking inner thigh or maybe the back of the cloak. Because if you made sure that the weapon and the face is looking so stellar that you possibly can, no one is gonna bother looking at the less detailed areas of the miniature. Now moving on to the face, and in this case the cool mask thing of the miniature, I'm thinking I'll paint this in gold NMM to make him look as fly as humanly possible. But I've told you how to paint gold NMM so many times before, so to spare you guys from the utter misery of making this video like 45 minutes long, make sure to watch these videos where we do deep dives in how we paint gold NMM using our freaking paint sets. While I paint the gold NMM on this face mask, let me talk about this week's sponsor, Into the AM. Over the past 3 years, I think I've been wearing Into the AM shirts for at least 4 out of 5 work days. And heck, just look at what the frick is happening here.
I'm a whore.
And he wasn't even supposed to be in this freaking sponsor part. He just came to the office and looked like this. If this isn't proof of concept enough that me and Emil absolutely love their shit. Because Into the AM makes some of the best graphic t-shirts on the internet. But they do not only make awesome looking graphic tees, they also feature sleeker designs. They have flannel shirts, they have awesome looking freaking jackets that, by the way, I really want to get my hands on. And they also have super comfortable sweatpants, sweatshirts, everything you might ever need in your wardrobe to look better than you actually do, Steve. And right now, Into the AM is celebrating their anniversary by having a 50% off sale on some of their products, such as this awesome looking t-shirt that Into the AM did as a collaboration with us here at Squidmar a couple weeks ago. You cannot go wrong with Into the AM's apparel, so head over to intotheam.com/Squidmar or follow the link in the video description. Get some nice stuff, look better than ever before. Now let's keep painting some rats. Moving on to the weapons. So, to get your weapons as fly as possible, I tend to try to make my swords look as interesting as possible. Meaning for this steel blade, I'm gonna be using greens, browns, blues, and even some yellows to make it fit in the atmosphere and look as cool as I can possibly make it. So for the areas angled down toward the ground, I'll add dark rust. The areas towards the sky, paint them with dark sea blue, and the areas closest to all of the warp stones, dark green. Next up will be to paint the reflections themselves, starting in the blue section by mixing some dark sea blue with deck tan, and then by roughly painting the reflections we can get a nice and quick base. Then by simply adding more and more ice yellow to the same mix, we can easily go up in brightness until we reach full ice yellow. And do keep in mind to add each highlight to a slightly smaller surface for every pass. And to add the reflections on the green part, simply add some deck tan and lime green to the dark green and go up until you reach a similar brightness as to the brown highlight. For the brown part, I'm simply adding some sunny skin tone to the dark rust until we reach about 50-50. Make sure this is darker than the final highlight on the blue side, because this is only some bouncing reflections from the ground, which makes it less intense than the direct sunlight hitting the top of the blade. And with that done, let's move on to secret number 4. Spend less time on unimportant shit. As we've talked about many times now in this video, and when you have a larger mini like in this case, and you've spent all that extra time making sure that the weapons and the face and torso are looking so freaking good, you can really afford to not spend time on some of those more uninteresting areas, such as the back of the cloak, the bottom part of the feet, maybe the inner side of the arm, and just in general, areas of the mini that's not really interesting. Secret number 5. Make sexy bases. Making good-looking bases doesn't have to be hard or demanding whatsoever. Obviously, I spent a fair bit of time building this particular base. However, when it comes to painting it, the biggest and most important thing is to keep making good decisions. For this mini, I'm going for a more simple paint scheme for the base, but I still want it to look really awesome. And since I'm using a lot of reddish and warmer tones in the rat, I'm gonna go for more desaturated green tones and browns in the base. Because you guys know that reds and greens on the color wheel complement each other, but because I decided to go for a more desaturated green on the base, this is gonna make all of the interesting parts of the rat pop a lot, complementing all of the nice details on the rat rather than competing for the attention. So for the rocks of the base, I'm using only Cayman green, but by diluting the paint, we can use the translucency and use several layers to build up highlights and intensity. I'm just using my brush to do rough expressionistic strokes to get textures in a lot of the areas, and not pushing the highlights to the oomph degree, because we really want to keep this as desaturated and moody as possible. To make the base even sexier, adding a pigment wash to the entire base, allowing it to creep up a little bit on the legs, maybe the robe and on the tail, will really solidify this as a stellar looking paint job. Secret 6. Overall atmosphere and bringing it all together. When we have these massive minis, we really want them to look cohesive and tell a story. So one way I like to fix this is once everything on the mini is painted and everything is done, to go in and shade the entire mini using an ink. This will make all the shadows have a slight orangey brown hue in this case, meaning that the mini is gonna look like all the parts are in the same environment. And this technique of shading your miniature in the last step through an airbrush is golden, especially for armies when we want to save time to bring everything together and shade it to the same tones all over. On my Black Templars, I blended all the golds and blacks together with a black tone. On Emil's goblins, he used a magenta ink to give more blood flow to all the shadows. This can really be applied to every army that you paint. Just find a shadow that matches your atmosphere, the bases of your army, and the army in general to really bring that atmosphere together in the last possible step. Now that we've done all these 6 steps, you know every dirty little secret into painting sexy, bigger minis. And if you didn't catch it already, every single paint used in this video can all be found in our paint sets we've made alongside Vallejo. The 3 sets are made to complement each other with 36 paints, and these paints can all be used to paint whatever you want. That's literally the reason that we made them, to make it as easy as possible for you guys to follow along what we paint in our videos. But with that said, I think it's time for a grand reveal! Woo! Yeah, bitch! Reveal time! Woo! Thank you guys a lot for watching this video. If you want to support us and be a part of the greatest community on the face of this planet, make sure to head over and watch out our Patreon. A massive thanks to all of you guys, especially the top donors. You guys are absolute living legends. And also a massive thanks to this week's sponsor, Into the AM, for making us look fly as always. With that said, have a great day. Bye bye.